Like at Bain, I was in Gurgaon. I hated Gurgaon, so I was not very happy there in general.
All the Gurgaon fans would be like, they'll stop watching the video.
No, I mean now I like it a little bit, but
Little bit, yeah, little bit.
it's unfair to expect that a 19-year-old will know poultry business in China.
Oh, so you were just 19 when you got into Bain?
I was 19 when I got into Bain.
Oh my god,
Yes.
that's very young. Yeah. Hi everyone, welcome to Conversation with Kushal once again. Today I have with me a young 25-year-old founder of a rupees 1,300 crores. Welcome Subin to Conversation with Kushal. Glad having you here.
Thank you, Kushal. No, I think you're too kind. Still long way to go for us, but no, great to be doing this. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for doing this, and I think it's super inspiring what you've achieved at such a young age, and inspires a lot of people like me and my audience to do better in their lives as well.
Yeah, no, I think long way to go for us, but thank you so much.
Yeah. So can you walk us through your early childhood? What was your childhood like? What was your upbringing like? And how did that help you in your day-to-day journey today?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, born and brought up in Bombay for most part of my childhood. My father was a bureaucrat in the revenue services. That I think helped me as a founder because I was around numbers and financials quite a bit. So I had two sisters, both of whom were in the corporate world. A lot of learning from them at a very early age on what are the different careers that exist, what does the work entail in those careers, and that helped me get a sense of what I want to do. I think the second part of my childhood was a lot of freedom to figure out kya karna hai, figure out what sort of I am passionate about, which I'm very thankful to my parents for. They didn't take a very rigid approach with me कि engineer ही बनना है, and I think that helped me a lot in later life.
You always wanted to become an entrepreneur right from your childhood?
No, I would not say right from my childhood. I think right from my childhood I had this fascination around finance and fascination around building value, building wealth. But I was not clear that I wanted to become an entrepreneur then. For me, I think that learning came later in college, and that's where it really got very deeply entrenched in me that I want to have my own thing.
Which college did you go to?
I went to Xavier's in Bombay for my graduation.
How was your experience at Xavier's? What kind of activities you were involved in, and did that shape your personality to what you are today?
No, definitely. In fact, before I joined Xavier's in school, I was a pretty introverted guy. I wasn't very outgoing, didn't try a lot of things. Xavier's was a big game changer for me. I joined Xavier's in junior college, so what's outside of Bombay referred to as 11th and 12th. Right? So very early. In college, I think at a very early stage, I got a lot of exposure because of the whole junior college atmosphere. I contested student council elections from my first year till my last year in Xavier's, won every single year. Became chairperson of a couple of festivals in my third year. Also started two companies in college.
Oh, wow.
Which was my first sneak peek into entrepreneurship.
So what were these two companies about?
So one was a financial services company. So I did my first internship when I was 17.
Okay.
Which again I'm thankful to my parents for because they really pushed me. Ki instead of reading or just researching about something, jaake karo. Right. So I interned with Reliance Capital in the capital markets team when I was 17 years old. That really got me interested in stock markets as a whole. ये कैसे होता है, how does this whole equities work, right? And I got really into it. I was obsessed about it. I would make sure I wake up every morning 9 a.m. when the Sensex opened to start trading. Then I realized I have a bunch of friends जिनके पास savings है, who want to invest it, but who have no clue how to invest it, right? So I formed a small company where I would take capital from them, small amounts, 5 to 10,000. I think took it to a corpus of 5-6 lakhs. Seemed like a very big amount then. And I would invest on their behalf, give them reports, make sure they had earnings. The second was with a friend of mine in college called AcadMap. Right there, what I realized was that Xavier's being a multidisciplinary college, right? Nobody really had visibility into दूसरे stream में क्या हो रहा है, right? But there was a lot of curiosity. Like I was always curious that okay, what do folks in stats learn about? Or what do folks in geology learn about, right? So we created an online journal of sorts, right? A tech journal where people would come in, put simple articles on a respective topic. But the whole crux was that break it down so that a very layman can understand. And that was something else I felt, and a lot of my friends felt about Indian education, that it's unnecessary, thoda sa complicated, and it can be taught in a simple way. I think that went on to build a team of about 70-80 people there.
Wow.
That still exists. It is it's in the VS College body today. So yeah, very proud of both of them.
Very nice. And after these two entrepreneurial stints, like how did this transformation happen from an introvert and a shy kid in school to an extrovert and a like very hustler kind of a person in your college?
I think Xavier's to a large part is to thank for that. The college has this vibe of a lot of freedom, of a lot of intellectuality, a lot of thinking, right? Why are we doing something? I think unfortunately a lot of other Indian education systems are very bureaucratic in the way they work, right? That ye aise hi hota hai, do it in a particular way. Xavier's is not like that at all. You are always pushed to think, pushed to challenge yourself. The college has that vibe. Thankfully, I got the right kind of folks there. I think also getting involved in a bunch of college activities very early was a very good enabler there, right? Because I met a lot of people from who were seniors, juniors, got a lot of confidence in myself, which I think was a very very important thing. That I am someone who can get stuff done. I am someone who can take on a large project and ensure it's executed well. So that was the biggest enabler.
So how did these kind of skills of, let's say, leadership or communication, building a team of 70, 80 people and all of that sort, how did these come to you as a person? Was it natural? Was it inbuilt? Or you learned it over the job? How was that entire experience of gaining that skill set?
Some of it was natural, but I would still say large part of it was on the job. Leadership definitely was on the job, right? As I said, I started leading student council from the time I was in my first year, right? So that came very naturally to me. Different people complaining about different things and then figuring out how do we solve it, how do we get people on the same page. College fests were a big piece of this, right? That in a college fest, just managing such a large team, making sure things are happening in all that chaos, that was a large element, right? Third was just being able to manage the pressure and make sure that I know what I'm doing and can get multiple things done. The whole aspect of multitasking, that was also a big learning through that period.
Got it. Makes sense. So what next from Xavier's? How was your life after Xavier's?
So Xavier's, I got in my third year in Xavier's, I got placed at Bain pretty early.
Okay.
So Bain comes to campus at Xavier's. I was lucky to crack a job there. Happened towards the early part of third year.
Okay.
Right.
So how many people would be there, like in third year? How many people graduate?
Across fields, I believe it's a total of about 250-300 people.
And out of these, how many go to consulting, like McKinsey, BCG, Bain?
McKinsey, BCG, Bain is 4.
That's it. Out of 250.
Yeah, 4.
My God, like this is too low, and you were one of them.
I was one of
And
them.
how many of them would go to Bain?
Bain was 3.
Okay, so
McKinsey was 1.
Okay.
BCG doesn't come.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
So you were out of those 3 who got into Bain.
Who got into Bain?
So how was your interview experience at Bain, and what kind of questions you were asked? And I mean, how was it for you to get a shortlist? How does
Yeah.
that entire process happen? Like it's like a campus placement thing, which
It's a
happens
campus
in
placement.
colleges.
I think it starts off at a CV round, right? Where even consulting firms look very actively as to what have you done in your college experience beyond just vanilla academics, right? So what college bodies have you been a part of? Any evidences of you trying to start something in college. Typically what we saw with Bain and McKinsey at least was that folks who had been leadership level in the college across various societies and fests were given a preference for being shortlisted.
Got it.
Right? Because I think they use that as an analogy for this is someone who knows how to get stuff done. After that, interview experience was pretty fast. So Bain does it over a period of 48 hours. They will do back-to-back guesstimates, then combined with case studies. I think the team overall was very friendly, but yes, it was a little.
So do you remember what kind of guesstimates you were asked?
I think my guesstimate was estimate how many people are wearing a red shirt in Bombay today.
Okay.
And my case interview was even funnier. I remember my case interview was that you are managing a project for a chicken farm in US. They want to expand into China. How will they expand? And I was like, मुझे ना तो poultry समझ में आता है, ना तो US समझ में आता है, ना तो China समझ में आता है.
Right.
But it was fun.
How do you tackle these kind of questions? Do they test your presence of mind there? Do they test your way of structuring these problems? How do you manage to answer them?
I think they assume that you don't know anything about the industry, right? It's unfair to expect that a 19-year-old will know poultry business in China.
Oh, so you were just 19 when you got into Bain?
I was 19 when I got into Bain.
Oh my God,
Yes.
that's very young. Yeah.
So they don't expect you to know any of this, like, poultry business in China, anything. They just expect 2 things. One, ability to ask basic, simple questions and pull information out from the interviewer, right? Second is taking that information and then structuring it in a simple way. Okay, this is the data you've given me. Basis this is the most calculated guess I can give you, right? And that's it. That's just about it. So I think a lot of folks get nervous here thinking that, okay, I don't know about this particular market. I don't know the macro factors, micro factors. But my thought would be that you're not expected to know that.
Correct.
And even on the job as a management consultant, 99% of the times you're working with a client where you have no idea about the business, right? So it's part of the profession as well.
So how did you structure the red shirt problem, if you remember?
Ah.
Like, what did you do?
I think I went about just estimating the number of people in Bombay, men, women, broke that down by age groups. Then looked at in a particular age group what is the propensity to wear red. Of course, you need to know the population of Bombay as a
Correct.
broad number.
Yeah.
That's just it. You come to a high level answer.
Okay, got it. So it's more like a demand side kind of an approach.
Correct.
Got it. Makes sense. So let's talk about your experience at Bain as well. What was your work profile like? What kind of cases you have worked there?
Yeah.
And how did it go for you?
I think Bain was a fantastic stepping stone. And was a great foundation for me in my professional career. Started off with a pretty rigorous training program, which I think Bain has done very well. So it was about 2 to 3 weeks of just training, right? Across Excel models, how to make PPTs, how to write emails, how to take call notes, right? Very basic things which I think a lot of companies don't teach you.
So is it in-house or they outsource?
It's in-house. It's in-house.
So senior employees of Bain only teach you all these things.
Something I've copied exactly at Groyyo now. But that was a good learning experience. After that, I got put in the private equity team. So private equity is where
Bain Capital.
No. Bain Private Equity Consulting.
Okay.
They work with the likes of Tiger Global, SoftBank, do a commercial
due diligence.
Yes, they will do a CDD. It's both CDD studies where they do a commercial due diligence on a target, or it is also portfolio work.
So what exactly would be commercial due diligence?
Commercial due diligence would be, for example, if a fund is looking at my business, right? They would look at the sector, the macro tailwinds in the sector, what is the market looking like, who are the different competitors, how does this company stack up against the competitors, what is your right to win, and what value services you provide to your clients. Right?
Okay.
So that was one part of the work. Second part of the work was then portfolio work, where we would work with, say, Tiger portfolio or SoftBank portfolio, and could be anything like portfolio wants to do some restructuring or wants to do some market entry along those lines.
So for the benefit of everyone, from what I understand is that, for example, if SoftBank wants to invest in a startup and if they want to do a due diligence, they'll outsource it to Bain.
Correct.
And then you on behalf of Bain would be working on that,
Correct.
presenting your thesis to Tiger Global or SoftBank, any
Correct.
company, any VC fund.
Yeah.
And then basis that they take a decision, of course, depending on other factors as well.
Correct. Yeah.
Got it, makes sense. So what kind of course without naming the clients, but what kind of businesses you had worked when you were at Bain, and how was that entire experience of case solving and all?
It was pretty exciting. I think very diverse. One was a credit bureau in Africa. Second was a baby stroller company which wanted to enter Japan.
Wow.
Third was one of India's biggest hospitality startups that had acquired a company in Europe. Right, so very diverse. A lot of learning in terms of just being able to absorb information at lightning speed, because all these projects are also very time bound, right? I think one thing that Bain really taught me are two things. One would be getting stuff done at amazing speed, right? My manager would set timelines like, so when I want this slide in 7 minutes, and if it's not done in the 7th minute, there would be a ping on my desktop that why is it not done, right? So just being able to just consistently churn out output, right? Second would be being able to understand without getting really into the details, right? Because as a consultant, you don't have the time to go and study for 2 months in the industry. You have 2 weeks on the project, but you need to brush yourself up so you're as good as an expert, right? So there's an ability to absorb information very fast and take away the key elements of something without having to read through a 100-page report. Again, was something I picked up from Bain.
So what not to read is more important than what to read.
What not to read more important, absolutely.
Right. And like, doesn't it create some sort of pressure if, let's say, your boss is asking you to send something in the next 7 minutes?
Yeah.
How do you tackle that? I mean, that is something which might cause some sort of pressure or tension or nervousness.
It's a lot of pressure.
Or how do you handle that?
I think it's a bit of a personality type, right? And I think we saw a bunch of our batch. So Bain does a batch of like 40-50 people they hire, and we saw about 15% leaving in the first 3 months, right? So I think
it's a high attrition rate.
It's a high attrition, and it's also a bit of a choice you want for yourself, right? There would be multiple jobs which can give you a much more relaxed, calm way of working, but of course the learning may not be as fast paced. So it's a trade-off. Bain of course presents one with a very high learning, fast growth opportunity, but at the same time it's high on stress, high on pressure, right? There are multiple projects I was working from 9 a.m. to 2 a.m. at a stretch for like
my god, 17 hours.
Weeks at a stretch. So I think that's what it is. That's the job.
Got it. And you got into Bain when you were 19. So
I got into when I was 19, started working when I was 20.
Okay, got it. So a 20-year-old working for 17 hours a day almost for a stretch and also, I mean, did you skip some classes or something? How did you get in at 19 or 20?
I graduated from college when I was 20.
Okay, got it. So you didn't skip any classes and all?
Don't think so.
20, yeah, makes sense. So got into Bain at 20. So how long were you there at Bain?
I was there for 1.5 years.
Okay. So you worked for 3 cases, you mentioned.
No, I worked for a good 8-9 cases. These were
8-9 cases?
3
Wow.
notable ones.
Okay, got
So
it.
on average, a Bain CDD is about 2 to 3 weeks, and a portfolio case might be about 6 weeks.
Okay, got it. So when did you decide you want to quit your job from Bain and work in a startup? So
It was a tough
how was
decision. I think this was when I was consulting for a startup.
Yeah.
Right. I think, and this was a portfolio case. So this company had acquired another startup, and we were part of the M&A. Right. I was working with that startup as one of their employees for almost 2 months. That was my longest case.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
What I saw there were people who were exactly my age, doing crazy impactful stuff, managing a whole P&L, managing a dhanda, looking at demand, supply, hiring, and that was my first realization of मैं क्या कर रहा हूँ, right? And I think while the life of a consultant of course has its own pros, I always wanted to get my hands dirty, and I enjoyed getting my hands dirty. In Bain I missed that to a certain extent because very high level research oriented work, right? And then I realized यार ये नहीं होगा मुझसे. I want to work in a startup. I actually left Bain without having figured out मुझे क्या करना है.
Okay.
Because I was just clear that I don't think I can do this anymore. I wanted to take some time to figure out क्या करना है, and yeah.
So like you quit your job and you didn't have any job.
I didn't have a job at the
For
time.
how many months or days?
About 2 months.
So what did you do in those 2 months?
Just spent a lot of time speaking to people I know in every kind of company, in every kind of business. See, I was clear I wanted to join a startup. That decision was made. कि startup करना है, right? The startup I'd worked with was a consumer tech startup, right? So, and I was clear I didn't want to do that. I didn't understand consumer businesses. I was never a fan of. I was never an expert at digital marketing, SEO. So I just didn't understand it. So I was like, okay, consumer नहीं करना है, तो क्या करना है? I spent a lot of time deliberating between fintech and B2B, right? So B2B I understood because I am a very simple core धंधा guy. So it resonated a lot with me कि आप किसी चीज़ को 100 रुपये में खरीद के 105 में बेच रहे हो, makes sense, right? Fintech I understood because again I've always, I said earlier, I've always appreciated money and wealth in a third world country which is credit starved, right? So I felt बहुत opportunity है वहाँ पे. Finally I decided on B2B because of the opportunity I got also, and because I felt it's more connected to the grassroots, where you're actually going to the grassroots of the economy and trying to change something.
So usually what I've noticed is that people try to leave their job unless they have something in their hands, and you were like कि छोड़ो यार मेरे को job नहीं चलेगा, 2 महीने मैं कुछ ना कुछ कर लूँगा और बाद में job के लिए apply करूँगा. So you didn't have that fear of not getting your salary for the next 2 months, or you didn't have that thought कि यार अभी यार पैसा credit नहीं होगा बैंक account में, तो वो सब नहीं आता था?
Not that much. Again, I think comes a little from my upbringing, and from my mother a lot. My mom always used to promote a very risk-taking culture, in the sense that she would always be like, if you have confidence in something, तुम कर लोगे, right? So I think I always had a lot of belief in myself कि कुछ ना कुछ तो कर लूँगा. ऐसा नहीं होगा that I will leave and then not have a job at all, right? But I didn't want to do a job just for the heck of doing a job, right? I wanted to actually do something where I enjoy doing it. And I also saw this at Bain a lot, that there were a bunch of folks there who very openly didn't enjoy working there, but were like, ठीक है, it's a well-paying, established job, and they were doing that for 7-8 years. So like, I don't want to get into that rut.
What was the salary you were getting at Bain?
Bain, I was at about 12 lakhs.
Okay. And this would be like, I've heard that in consulting, I think the growth rate of salary is much higher as compared to other industries.
Yeah, very high. It was about 25-30% every year.
Oh wow, that's huge.
Yeah.
Right. I think leaving that, and then like people get comfortable in those kind of jobs, right? I mean, even I have experienced this, and a lot of my friends also, I've talked to them.
Yeah.
It's like a high paying job, and then it becomes difficult to let's say take a plunge in anywhere, like in entrepreneurship or something.
Correct.
So did you not get comfortable with that kind of money being credited in your bank account every month?
Not that much. I think I never had a very expensive lifestyle.
Okay. What kind of lifestyle you had?
Like at Bain I was in Gurgaon, I hated Gurgaon, so I was not very happy there in general.
All the Gurgaon fans would be like, they'll stop watching the video.
No, I mean now I like it a little bit, but...
little bit, yeah, little bit.
But yeah, I had a very normal lifestyle.
Why did you hate Gurgaon, by the way?
I think as a city, it just doesn't have a lot of culture, doesn't have that vibe of having history, having something about it. Delhi I still like a lot more. The amount of time I spent in Delhi, I've enjoyed that. Bombay, of course, die-hard fan.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, no, I think so my lifestyle was pretty normal. Went to office, came back, hung out with a few friends at home. And for me, the biggest thing then was that I was very restless about the fact that I want to figure out what I want to do, right? And what exactly is it that keeps me going. And I think I realized within a year of consulting that this is not what keeps me going.
Got it.
It was a great stepping stone. I like what I'm doing. It's not that I'm miserable, but it's not something which I would, stay awake on a Sunday for.
Right.
And that put a lot of frustration into me. That,
Got it.
I need to figure out exactly what is it that keeps me going. And that was one of the biggest reasons I took the plunge, where I was like, okay, let me take some time out, figure out exactly what keeps me going.
So in my opinion, if you ask me, it's very difficult for anyone, like irrespective of the age, it's very difficult to figure out, okay, what's going to keep you going for the next 10 years, 20
Correct.
years, or maybe what will keep you happy all the time,
Correct.
what will help you in order to wake
Correct.
up. Like everyone, it's very difficult to have clarity at any age or any point in your life.
Correct.
So I think it's just like, it's natural, it comes naturally in my opinion.
So I think a part of it came from my experience in college when I started a couple of companies, right? So I think that gave me a taste of entrepreneurship, but there I felt that I lacked the acumen, resources, ability to really build a scalable business. So somewhere in the back of my mind, ye tha ki, okay, I want to have my own dhanda, right?
Makes sense.
I felt Bain was not really contributing towards that, right? Which is why I felt it's time for me to
Makes sense.
move on.
So what happened next? Like after that couple of months, you started applying to different startups?
I started applying to different startups. I was also looking at venture capital at a point. I got an offer from Zilingo then. So that was not a job I'd reached out to, but they reached out to me, and I knew Zilingo because the founders were from Xavier. So of course, I'd heard of the company. I knew what they do. It was also B2B business, so it made sense to me, right? The business model also at the time made sense to me. Ki, theek hai, you're in B2B textiles. It's a age-old industry where there is value creation. You're trying to unlock that, make it more efficient, make it more streamlined, right? I think key element for me that helped me choose Zilingo was that while the company at the time was sizable, they had hired me for a founder's office role for the South Asia operations, right? I was the 6th employee in South Asia, right?
Okay.
So wo pura P&L non-existent tha. And they were pretty clear that we don't know how to do it. We are building this initial team and they have to build it from scratch. So that for me was very exciting, right? That while I'm in a job per se, it's not my own company, but I am part of that growth journey where I will build something from scratch. I will be part of that initial team, which is why I went and chose that.
And you applied to other companies also apart from
Yes,
Zilingo?
I applied to other companies.
So how many companies? What kind of companies you applied?
Startups was one.
Okay.
Interviewed and applied to a bunch of startups.
You got offers from?
I got a couple of more offers.
Okay.
VC,
but you chose Zilingo like out of all?
I chose Zilingo, one because B2B.
Yeah.
Second because that kind of a role where you're part of the early
Founding team.
Yeah. Right? That was the biggest drive. And
Got
third because of industry also. Like in general, I felt textile was a old evergreen industry that's here to stay.
Yeah. We'll talk about Zilingo's model and all of that. But before that, how did you decide between working in a venture capital versus working in a startup? What factors did you consider and how did you decide that okay, startup mein kaam karna hai, VC mein kaam nahi karna hai?
So I think my flatmate then actually was working at Matrix, right?
Okay.
One of the best VC funds in the country.
Yeah.
So I got a very good insight into what kya karta hai at a day-to-day level. What does an investment analyst do, right? And I felt that wasn't for me. Like my key reason for leaving Bain is I want to get more hands-on, get into the ground, actually get my hands dirty and build something, right? Venture capital is fundamental. That's not your JD, right? Your JD as a IA is more to meet founders, look at theses across sectors, see which sector is doing well, where can the fund take a bet, how can you build a good thesis, right? So it's more of, again, similar work to consulting, in my view, with more elements around networking, people skills, which I didn't feel was what I wanted at the time. So it was a very clear choice for me. I want a job that helps me get my hands dirty, helps me build a business where I'm actually the one who is executing at a day-to-day level.
Got it. Makes sense. So let's talk about your experience at Zilingo. What did you work? How did you contribute? And what exactly is the business model? If you can explain to everyone. You mentioned about B2B and textiles.
Yeah.
But what exactly, if you can help us understand that?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Unfortunately, Zilingo is bankrupt now. So, I think the business model, what they started out as, was to build a B2B commerce platform where you have buyers and sellers of textile products come on and transact on the platform, more of a marketplace for textiles. Over time, they added bunch of stuff on that. So they added a SaaS layer, they added a fintech layer, they tried adding marketing services layer, right, and become like a super platform for B2B textile. That was a vision, right? When I joined, I came in as a analyst in the founders team, right? Started off with very basic stuff, but I was very lucky that very early I was given a lot of responsibility, right? So I joined at a time when Zilingo itself had a very big management rehaul. They hired a new VP to look at the entire South Asia business. I was directly reporting to that guy, so he gave me a lot of independence. Ki India business tum pura dekho, right? It was also a very scary moment for me because I had come in from consulting where you're not doing a lot of decision making. You're doing a lot of suggestions ki this industry looks good, but all of a sudden there were like $50,000 payments which required my approval, and I was like, what the hell is going on, right? But a fantastic learning curve. When I left Zilingo, so when I joined, it was an 8-member team. When I left, South Asia itself was a 180-member team. I had about 50-60 folks reporting to me. I was leading revenue and growth across the entire South Asia business. So it was a very, very, very steep learning curve. I think every day was a massive challenge.
So how old were you when 50-60 people were reporting to you? 23?
I was 23, yeah.
And these people would be what, 30-35 types? Or?
50 tak.
Yeah. Okay. So tell me one thing, like this is a very interesting thing where a person who's 23 and if 50-year-old are reporting to that guy, how do you tackle ego issues in this kind of an environment? I mean, like some people would feel like, अरे यार ये तो बच्चा है तो अभी आया है,
most people feel that.
इसको तो क्या ही आता होगा, मैं इसको क्या बता रहा हूँ यार, मतलब इससे क्या ज्ञान मिलेगा मेरे को, ऐसे टाइप. So how do you tackle that entire environment? Did that happen with you?
That
and
happened
if
a lot.
Yes, how do you
That
tackle?
happened a lot. I think start off with curiosity. Ki exactly what do you do? Never start off with I know I can tell you what to do better. That's number one. Number two is figure out how you can help them in life. Someone who's been in their business for 20-30 years knows what he's doing, right? So ऐसा नहीं है that you will suddenly go and tell him some rocket science and you can do something, right? So find out a problem to solve for him. The moment you find a problem to solve for that senior person, he will have a certain amount of loyalty to you, right? And it could be very small problem, like किसी का problem था कि अच्छा मुझे एक merchandiser चाहिए under me, management is not giving me approval for the last 6 months, right? So make a case to the leadership, अच्छा this guy is doing well, this is his pipeline, let's give him one more guy, getting that approval, right? Someone else's problem could be, okay, I need to pay this vendor, I don't have finance approval, so just work with the finance team to get him approval. Number two is solve a problem. And number three is always have a lot of humility, right? You cannot go in with that egoistic approach that, okay, I'm the guy in charge, I call the shots, right? You have to realize you need them more than they need you, right? Tomorrow if you're not there, the company will find one more generalist to manage the P&L. But if they are not there, dhanda kahan se aayega, right? So that learning, this is the only way in my view to manage these kind of founders office kind of roles where you are very young but with a lot of responsibility and with much senior people reporting to you.
So what's your opinion on generalist versus specialist roles? What do you prefer? What are the pros and cons of each? Before that, if you can just help everyone understand what exactly is a generalist and specialist.
Yeah. A generalist would be someone who is looking at a bunch of functions and KPIs, not tied down to anyone, who is also someone who does not come in with hardcore experience in say finance or HR or sales, but who's someone who's expected to manage a bunch of things. So I would say jack of all trades, master of none, right? Specialist would be the opposite of that, someone who's like a hardcore finance expert, HR expert, sales expert, right, who's managing that specific function.
Right. So yeah, what are your thoughts on generalist versus specialist roles?
From someone doing it point of view or hiring point of view?
Doing it point of view. So most of the people in my audience would be someone who will be applying for jobs and someone. So from their perspective, the question is like, which role would they have a better exposure or they'll be able to learn more? Yeah,
I think depends a little bit on what you see for yourself in life, even if it's a little early to say that, right? If you see yourself as, okay, I want to be in human resources, I want to be in sales, or I want to be in finance, right? Then you definitely should go for a specialist role, right? You cannot say I'll be the CFO of a company and be a generalist. Most CFOs you see will be like hardcore CAs, worked in audit firms, done a lot of hardcore finance work, right? But if you see yourself as leaning towards more of say growth strategy, investment kind of roles, or you see yourself starting your own company, then definitely generalist, right? For me, a generalist role was a clear path because I wanted to start my own company. So I wanted to learn whatever it takes, every aspect of the business, starting from hiring, legal, entity setup karna hai, finance structure setup karna hai, pipeline manage karna hai, all of that. So I was very clear I want to learn whatever it takes to start a business, right? So for me, it made a lot of sense to go into a generalist role.
Yeah, makes sense. I think completely agree with you on this. And when did you decide that, okay, abhi bas Zilingo bhi bas ho gaya and I really want to start something of my own, which I wanted to do right from my Xavier's day, or I really wanted to become an entrepreneur? When did that point come in your life?
So I think there was a bit of a back and forth there, right? So when I was at Zilingo, I was clear I want to start something, but initially I had a lot of faith in the business model. As the company grew, I started seeing, okay, this business model may not be very commercially viable and may not be something that can outlast, right? But I had a lot of confidence on the textile industry. In my day-to-day biz ops, I could clearly see this is a fantastic evergreen global market. There are a lot of macro tailwinds that is definitely contributing. There is a lot of China -1 happening, a lot of supply chain shift happening, right? So I felt it's a great opportunity in general, right? Whoever does it, whether Zilingo did it or any other peer did it, right? I did contemplate then for a bit, कि, okay, should I do my masters and then start up, or should I start up immediately then? That was a tough decision because I think I spent 2 months on that. That अभी MBA करना चाहिए, अभी immediately अपना company शुरू करना चाहिए, right? The tipping point for me there was finding my co-founder, right? And my co-founder is also at Zilingo, right? And he was, in my view, he was the perfect guy I could have started up with, right? And I had a sense of the kind of co-founder I want, and when he said yes, I was like, okay, maybe I can do this after 2 years, but I won't find such a great co-founder with such great market dynamics, with a great opportunity and a gap after 2 years, right? If it is a great opportunity in my view in any market, it won't be untapped for more than 2 years. कोई ना कोई तो करेगा उसको, right? So then I was like, why not do it now?
How difficult was it for you to convince the co-founder?
Co-founder.
Yeah.
Good 2 months. Very
That was
difficult.
2 months. I think 2 months is your lucky time frame. Like 2 months break after Bain, then 2 months to decide on to entrepreneurship. 2 months to convince your co-founder.
That was a tough one, I think, because so he's about 46 now.
Oh, okay.
So he's married, has 2 kids. Of course, for him it was a much tougher decision, because for me, walking away from a job at 23 was still okay. You know, I'm young, I don't have that kind of responsibilities. But with 2 kids, it becomes a much harder decision. Plus, he had been in the textile business for 20 years, right? So he's a hardcore textile veteran, run his own factory, worked for brands, worked for Zilingo. So convincing him that you can do something differently was very difficult, because he was of this view कि ऐसे ही रहने वाला है, and there's not much you can do to change this around, right? But yeah, finally that worked out.
So tell me one thing, I mean, I'm curious to know here. So you're 25 and now he's what, 46, 47?
47 now.
47. So how do you manage? I mean, there's a huge gap, right? There's a huge age gap. I've seen co-founders who are like similar age or like college batchmates, etc. So how do you manage your disputes firstly? And secondly, don't you think like there's some sort of gap where, okay, now if you say something, he won't be agreeing, and if he says something and you're like, no, this is a new age solution, modern solution. How do you handle these kind of situations?
I see, in my view, the fact that we've had this gap has been one of the biggest reasons for our success, right?
Oh, is it?
And one of the biggest reasons why something like Zilingo didn't work out, right? Because you need, especially in a B2B business, you need both, right? In a B2B business, there is some things you can do differently, but some things you can't do differently, right? For example, fabric का swatch आपको भेजना होगा, like a physical product का sample भेजना होगा. You can't say I will make a 3D logo of that and send it to a brand, right? That is where his expertise helps.
So AR VR नहीं चलेगा.
नहीं चलेगा, right? Second, in a B2B ops heavy business, SOPs are very, very important, right? So first principle, figure it out, doesn't work. There is a certain SOP, it is meant to go in that way. If you don't follow the SOP, you will get railed over.
Can you give an example?
For example, before every shipment that goes to a buyer, you have to send a pre-production sample, right? That this is what the final product is going to look like. Please give us your comments now. Then we can incorporate it. If you don't do that and you send them the final shipment, they may say, okay, I didn't ask for this. I wanted a button-down collar. You sent me a flat collar, right? So again, SOPs are very important. So we needed someone with expertise who knows exactly what SOPs are required. Third is B2B businesses are very people-heavy, right? Tech, of course, is a catalyst, but you need people on the ground, right? That also means hiring people on the ground. So we built a team of 180 people in less than 1.5 years, right? Just because he had that initial network, he was able to pull in people from the industry, get the right, say, quality heads, design heads, fabric heads, right? So the org building part was a lot easier. Now coming to the decision making part, right? Again, I think that's very important, right? Because especially in venture funded businesses, because in the venture funded businesses, they're always trying to run very fast, right? You are trying to chase crazy growth. Now when you're trying to chase crazy growth, you need somebody to tell you to slow down, right? A lot of young founders, in my view, just get a little carried away, right? Ki, okay, we've raised a couple of $1 million, we can go and do ye bhi kar sakte, ye bhi kar sakte, ye bhi kar sakte, right? There Pratik has been the guy who's tied me down. Ki, no, let's do this first. Itna kar lete hain, let's not do more, right? For example, when we raised our last round, I was like, okay, let's go and set up a team in US tomorrow. 15 log hire kar lete hain, right? He was like, nahi, no point of hiring 15 people. Ek banda hire karte hain. Let's get 2-3 accounts, let's get some revenue, then we'll scale up the team. So that also, that maturity, that ability to just tie me down. Conflict bahut hota hai. Best way to deal with conflict, I think, is just respecting each other and understanding what are you good at, what are you bad at, right? So I am clear, I am not an industry expert even today. I have been in this industry for 4 years now, right? But I will still not know exactly kaun sa fabric kahan se aana chahiye, ya which manufacturer can get the best product, right? So on those kind of topics, I will trust him completely. If he says ye buyer ka order mat karo, this company is not doing well, even if the CIBIL report says company is doing very well, I know he's heard something in the market, the company is not doing very well, right? But he would respect me a lot on financial commercial matters, right? That from a long-term finance point of view, I have a lot more acumen, right? So if I, for example, say we should raise a particular amount of equity or debt, on that he would let me take a final call. So just having that clear demarcation from day zero, ki this is something on which this person takes the final call, this is something on which this person takes the final call.
Right.
That is the best way.
Very, very impressive. And now, like, you've decided that, okay, you want to take a plunge from Zilingo to starting something of your own. You have convinced other person also to become a co-founder. And then there's a birth of this company called Groyyo.
Yeah.
What's the meaning of Groyyo, by the way?
So Groyyo actually came from, we were like, acha, what is the key problem statement? Key problem statement is international buyers want to procure from South Asia. China se unko move away karna hai. They understand they need to procure from smaller vendors because they need flexibility, they need sharper prices,
to
right?
Procure what exactly?
Apparel.
Okay.
Apparel, lifestyle, etc. Right? Now the key challenge for them is, where do I find quality, where do I find reliability, and where do I find standardization in terms of tech, ESG, etc. Right? So Groyyo came from Oyoization of manufacturing, to put it very simply, right?
Okay.
So a standardized chain of manufacturers who are competent, who are quality enabled, who are tech enabled, and who are superior to the other manufacturers. Right? That was the initial birthing of the name.
So grow, like, so grow, I mean, is it broken down into two terms?
Just Groyyo.
Just Groyyo, that's it.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. Makes sense. And if you can explain everyone, like, now what exactly is your business model?
Sure.
How do you make money here? How do you monetize?
Yeah.
And how is it helping or adding value in the B2B space?
Sure. So we are a B2B supply chain business. We help fashion and lifestyle brands across the world and in India manage their entire procurement of apparel, footwear, accessories, etc.
Like the raw materials for them.
The finished goods,
Okay,
what they would sell to you.
Okay.
Right? We help them manage the entire procurement for that. So if you are a buyer at a brand, let's say, to put it down more simply, if you are a buyer at Mango, you will tell us, okay, Groyyo, I need 10,000 pieces of men's shirts.
You as in Mango will tell you?
Mango will tell us.
Okay.
Mango will tell us, I need 10,000 pieces of men's shirt. I need this for $4. I need this in my warehouse by the 30th of July. Right? उसके बाद पूरा आप देख लो. Right? Where to buy raw material from, where to find the factory, how to get the goods manufactured on time, how to ensure quality, how to ensure logistics. So all of that is our hassle, right? So we are a single stop, place your order and forget solution, right? Now on the back end, to enable this, we work with very small SME manufacturers across India, Bangladesh and Turkey today, where we enable them to cater to this. How do we enable them? Two, three elements, right? One is, of course, we bring them more orders, right? That's a key part, because sad reality is today most SME factories are at 50% capacity, right? So आधा factory खाली है. Whatever there is so much talk about, exports going up, China -1 happening, SMEs are still largely neglected. They're not doing phenomenally well. Second is, we help them procure the raw materials required to make those goods.
So you help these factories
then procure
the raw materials.
Correct.
And how do you help them now?
So if I give a factory an order for 10,000 pieces of shirts, to make that he will need, say, 4-5,000 kilos of fabric. Fabric is what is used to make shirt, right? Now he will mostly be procuring this fabric via multiple middlemen, sub quality. So we will tie up with a mill on the back end and get that fabric to him, right? And the third value add is access to formalized working capital. Most of these factories work with offline money lenders or traders even today. They are borrowing money at crazy 24-26%.
My God,
right?
That's a lot.
That's a lot. So giving them access to formalized working capital, we don't do this ourselves. We don't have an NBFC, but we work with multiple lenders who come in and lend to a factory base. Now if you take
These are unsecured loans.
These are unsecured loans, right? But still it would be in the range of, say, 15-18%.
Okay. Much lesser than what they are getting.
Now if you think of yourself for a minute as a small factory owner, right? What are the three things that keep you awake at night? मुझे धंधा चाहिए, वो धंधा करने के लिए मुझे रॉ मटेरियल चाहिए, और वो बिजनेस चलाने के लिए मुझे पैसा चाहिए. तीनों आपको ग्रोयो से मिलता है. And that was the thesis, that if we can solve these three biggest pain points for them, they are locked in our ecosystem, and why will they go to someone else then? And if we can control the supply chain, then brands will inevitably come to us only, because brands want a better supply chain. They want goods cheaper, faster.
Correct. So this is very interesting, and thanks for explaining it in such a lucid manner.
Yeah.
How did you solve the chicken and egg problem? How did you convince the first brand कि okay मेरे पास ये factory है? How did you convince the factory to come on Groyyo कि okay अब मेरे पास ये brand है? How did you solve that?
We went supply first. We were always very clear कि supply first है. See, because if you go to a brand and say कि मैं फिर supply figure out करूँगा, आप minimum 1 महीना spend करोगे supply figure out करने में, right? And by then the brand will get annoyed also कि छोड़ो, I'll give this order to someone else, right? So we first onboarded 15 to 20 factories. These were folks who mostly knew Pratik, my co-founder. So it was there his relationship helped, right? Who were willing to come on board with us, give us some capacity and be like, ठीक है, I can do your orders. Then we took those and marketed that to brands of those products, right? So we started off mostly with menswear. mostly menswear factories. Gurgaon was our first cluster, right? And we took those to that brands, and then the cycle started flowing.
So why can't these brands, like let's say Mango or Zara or whatever the
Yeah.
brands are, why can't these brands directly go to these factories and take orders? Like, why is there a need of Groyo here?
Two reasons, right? One is the brand can always directly go to a factory, but the brand chooses mostly to go to a large manufacturer in most of the cases. But now why? The why is important. A large manufacturer will provide better design, will provide better adherence to SOPs and SLAs.
What
Will
are SLAs?
SLAs will be like 30 दिन में माल बनाना है, 30 दिन में ही बनाना
क्या
right?
full form क्या है SLAs?
Uh,
Okay, I mean even I had no clue. That's why.
um,
ठीक है.
and a large manufacturer would provide in general a much more professional experience, right? Like you are getting regular updates, you're getting emails, right? Now when you work with the SME, none of this is there, right? So the brand cannot work with an SME just for the amount of hassle it would take for them, right? So if I were to put it differently, the SME has the value the brand needs, and the brand wants the value the SME needs, right? But those capabilities or building blocks for them to work with each other don't exist, right? SME को डिज़ाइन नहीं समझ में आता है, उसका प्रोडक्शन SOP ख़राब है, क्रेडिट अवेलेबिलिटी नहीं है, रॉ मटेरियल प्रोक्योरमेंट इज़ नॉट दैट गुड. दैट इज़ वेयर Groyyo comes in, right? So to put it very simply, I don't think what we do is rocket science. The value in the supply chain exists. We just enable them to unlock and benefit from each other.
Got it. Makes sense. How many factories you have tied up with as of now?
We are today working with about 350 factories
Wow.
across India, Bangladesh and Turkey as
Okay.
3 large hubs, and we are working with 110 brands across 8
Wow.
countries.
And what would be like some of the most prominent brands?
Prominent brands for us would be Mintra, Pantaloons,
Oh, okay. Got it.
Lefties, Carrefour,
Got it.
Mango.
Okay. So these people like come to you and you have like a bunch of factories.
Correct.
So do you have some app where all these 350 factories are listed
Correct.
or what is it about?
So
How is it?
not so we don't think of it as a marketplace business, right? Because we were very clear that visibility is not a problem. If you're a buyer at a brand in whichever country, you can go on India Mart, thanks to the great business they've built, search menswear factory in Ludhiana, you'll get 40 listings.
Correct.
Right? So listing is not a problem. The whole problem is supply chain management, that someone needs to manage the whole supply chain. So we do have a strong tech product, but that's entirely on the factory side.
Okay.
So we have an end-to-end tech product from inventory, production tracking, quality management. So if you are a factory that's using our tech, we will know at an SKU level कि कितने pieces cut हो गए, कितने pieces stitch हो गए, कितने pieces pack हो गए, right? So the entire production process is completely digitized. We have that visibility, the buyer has the visibility. That also entails कि अगर कहीं भी कुछ भी gap आ रहा है, right? So let's say 100 shirts were supposed to be cut this week, but the tech tells us 60 were cut. Then we of course put people on the ground, and for that we have a team in Dhaka who will then go sit in that factory. Achha, why did only 60 get cut? What is going wrong? How can we improve this production process? And that's what makes us more efficient as a business.
Got it. How do you make money here?
Very simply, if a buyer, say Mango, gives us an order for 50 lakh rupees, we will give it to a factory for 45 lakh rupees.
Okay. So it's like a trading business where तुमने 45 lakhs में माल खरीदा पूरा मैनेज करके and
Correct.
एक मैंगो जैसी ब्रांड को 50 lakhs में बेच दिया.
Absolutely.
Got it. Makes
Absolutely.
sense. No, very very interesting. Let's talk about your fundraising experience also.
Yeah.
How much money you have raised till date?
We have raised a total of $45 million.
Oh wow, that's huge. And the valuation of your company is what is the valuation?
1,300 crores.
Okay, which
160
is
million.
$160 million. So let's talk about your fundraising experience of let's say this entire $45 million. What are some of the things which founders should keep in their mind while pitching their investors? And what are some of the mistakes that you have done in your entire fundraising experience that you think यार ये मैं नहीं करता तो यार better हो जाता? Or maybe what are your learnings?
Yeah. I think what to keep in mind is,
Oh, by the way, I'm so sorry. Before that, he has raised from Tiger Global and Alpha Wave,
Yeah.
so which are like two of the most prominent investors of the world. So that's the background.
yeah. And I think biggest thing to keep in mind is two. One is have a lot of clarity on what you're building, right? Second is explain it as simply as possible. I would say that breaks down fundraising for me, right? क्यों कर रहे हो, क्या बनाना चाहते हो, और exactly इसको on ground कैसे कर रहे हो, right? I think you have to appreciate that most investors are looking at 15-16 categories. They are speaking to 100 founders in a month, right? So they don't know what is B2B textile, कौन mango, कौन factory, कौन fabric, right? If we complicate this, they'll be like तुम क्या कर रहे हो, क्यों कर रहे हो, right? So just simplifying it, exactly what is the problem, why are you doing this, and इसको कहाँ तक लेके जाना है. That's on the first part. In terms of what I could have done better, would be tied to this a little bit. I think initially in our seed round we tried ओवर कॉम्प्लिकेटेड लिटिल बिट कि अच्छा हमें फैक्ट्री फ्लोर ऑटोमेशन भी करना है, हमें ये भी करना है, राइट. सेकेंडली आई थिंक we didn't bring in a lot of clarity on how will we at scale make money, right? So that part is, I would say, for every founder. And I think as a founder, you should also, it's not just for the sake of fundraising, right? You should genuinely ask yourself this, that for you to get to a, say, a public kind of company, right, you need to be upwards of 1,000-1,500 crores in revenue minimum, right, to get to a decent public listing. So how will you get to that, right? And that's the answer you should have for yourself. Forget the investor, right? Because if you are raising money from venture capital, it is fundamentally to build a public company, right? Otherwise, you should not raise venture capital money. I'm not saying companies that are non-VC funded are bad companies. They're fantastic businesses. But as a venture funded company, you have to think of growth, right? So I think that clarity in your mind, that how will I get to 1,500 crores of revenue, how will I get to profitability, how does my unit economics work, should be there from day zero. That's not something you can say I will figure this out later. That has to be there before you get money. And I think you're being unfair to the investor if you don't have it figured it out, because he's giving you money saying, okay, I know how to do this, I know how to get revenue, I know how to make money, you give me capital, now I can turbocharge this. Right?
So do you think now VCs are preferring profitability or over growth? What's your opinion on that?
I think
Why was there a smile?
I think there was a time when perhaps there was a bit of a bubble in the market, right? Where there was too much emphasis on just crazy growth, right? Companies like Zilingo, unfortunately, were impacted by that, right? Because that's the kind of advice founders got from their board as well, that grow, right?
What went wrong with Zilingo?
Okay. I think without going too much into it, right? One was trying to do too many things at once, right? So without perfecting one. So Zilingo, as I mentioned, at a time was doing sourcing, was doing marketing services, financial services, software services, and running a B2C business, right? So just way too much confusion what you're trying to do. Second was on culture. I think just the founders were not too on the ground. They weren't really there in the nitty gritty of it with their factories, with their buyers. So they themselves had lost the pulse of the company, which is not advisable for a founder.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. Continue with it.
Yeah. On the growth versus profitability point, I think where we see the market today is actually a very helpful correction, right? End of the day, unless you're building a charitable business, a business has to make money fundamentally, right? That's 101. If you are in a business that is not making money, and maybe you don't make money for 1-2 years to get to certain growth, but if you are not making money at scale, then why are you running the business, right? And I think that recognition is very, very important, that you can't be saying that we're doing this for 15 years and we've burnt like upwards of $100 million, but we still don't know how we'll make money. So I think that was much needed in my view. And it's a welcome change. I do see investors being I would not say being very cognizant of profitability at an early stage. Like if anyone is raising their pre-seed or seed round, it's not that people expect you to be PAT positive from day zero, but just being very cognizant of unit economics, right? Ki you cannot be, Pratik's, I think it's one of Pratik's favorite quotes, right? You can't 100 में खरीद के 90 में बेचने को धंधा नहीं बोलते हैं, right? So you need to be clear on your unit economics. कि ठीक है, हो सकता है मैं 100 में खरीद में 105 में बेच रहा हूँ, उसके ऊपर मेरा आज इतना इन्वेस्टमेंट है, which is my burn, but I know why I'm burning. I know this will take me to a certain top line, and वो certain top line पे I'm 100% sure I'll get to PAT break even, right? So that thought process is very clear there now.
Right, makes sense. And any advice for founders in terms of how do they prepare pitch decks, or what's the importance or relevance of pitch decks?
एक तो I would say do the pitch deck yourself. I've seen too many founders not do it themselves.
Okay.
Second, I would say your pitch deck is a story, right? So I think a lot of people look at pitch deck formats, they'll download like a standardized template, right? There is no standardized template. Our own pitch deck for every round of capital has been very different, right? So it's all about the story you're trying to tell the investor, right? And think of it like a story. Let's say I'm an investor, I'm meeting you for the first time, I know nothing about your company, right? Your job is to explain to me why you're doing this, what market are you in, what is the problem you're solving, what is your business model, how are you going to do it, right? These are the 5 basic questions to answer, right? So just simplify it around that. And third would be that just really think through every slide on your pitch deck. Given that I've also done a few angel investments, I've seen a lot of decks where the founders just put it together for this heck of a slide, right? But it can be a very short deck, it can be a 6-7 page deck, but just think very deeply about every slide, right? If it is a GTM slide, कि आप इसको कैसे करोगे? Just think very operationally of that, right? That you have say 50 crores in the bank tomorrow. अभी आपको ये करना है. So how exactly will you do it? Where are you going to hire the people? How will you find those people? How will you crack those deals? How will you build your pipeline? So that clarity in thinking is very precious. So when we were raising, actually he used to keep a pitch deck and used to keep a Word document. That Word document, when we did our series round, was almost 50-60 pages, right? That was very helpful for me as a founder, just as a learning experience, right? Because I would force myself to write down every single thing about my business. And I think that gives a lot of clarity to you as an entrepreneur, that this is exactly how I'm going to do it.
I am curious to know what those 60 pages were, or maybe what exactly was the content like in those 60
Everything,
pages?
like, you know, so if in our pitch deck we had written stuff around Bangladesh expansion, right? So exactly कैसे expand करेंगे, team कैसे hire करेंगे, even to the extent of who the candidates were that I was planning on hiring, right?
Wow,
So
that's very granular.
And that level of granularity actually makes your execution much faster, right? And you're not then taking money and then trying to figure out कैसे करेंगे. Then you have everything clear. All you're waiting for is cash in the bank. The moment you get cash in the bank, you know, okay, this is what I have to do.
Correct. Yeah, that's a very good advice actually. Like most of the problems I think happen is that like you raise money and then you figure out क्या रे यार इसका breakup क्या है, इसको spend कैसे करना है. I think figuring out first कि कैसे क्या spend करना है, that's a very good advice to all the aspiring founders who are looking to raise capital. What do you think worked out really well for Groyyo? And I think you are the market leaders today in your industry.
Yeah.
So what would be the scale, the GMV?
Right now we're doing about $200 million run rate.
$200 million AR, like annual GMV.
Annual GMV run rate.
Okay, got it. And so this is what, around 1600
crores. Yes.
So this means that like companies like all these Mango, etc., companies are giving an order worth rupees.
So we recognize revenue when we deliver the order, not when we book the order. Book would be much more than this.
Oh, okay.
But our 1600 crores is the run rate of orders we are delivering every month to these buyers across the world.
Oh wow, that's huge. That's a very good skill. So what do you think worked out really well for Groyyo as compared to other competitors? And how do you think, like, I mean, how did you scale so fast in like what, 1.5 years?
Close to little more than 1.5 years.
Yeah, so like just little more than 1.5 years.
Yeah. Multiple things. I think we've honestly been a combination of hard work and luck, right? If I have to point it down, one would be just sticking to the basics a lot. So we didn't experiment or overcomplicate things at all. We're like, yahi karna hai, yahi aata hai, we'll just stick to this, right? Second was a very sharp hold on unit economics. So we became profitable last quarter, and we were one of the
profitable as well.
We are now profitable as well. One of the early companies to become profitable, right? Because we were very clear on our unit economics कि एक order में 5 रुपए बनता है, उसके लिए इतना खर्चा होता है, and this is how we are going to recover that cost, right? Third would be just, especially for a B2B business, retention is holy grail, right? You can spend money and effort and time to acquire X number of buyers every quarter, but if your buyers are running away from you, then it's bad for the business and there's fundamentally something wrong in what you're doing, right? So we were at 90% plus retention from the time we started the business, and we would treat every buyer as, you know, we have to do whatever it takes to keep this brand with us or keep this factory with us, right? So retention was very, very important to us.
Right. How important is customer retention for any business?
I think very critical. I think I can think of very few businesses where you would not spend money to acquire a customer, right? You will spend money, either you'll spend money or you'll spend time, which is also money, right? So you'll spend money to acquire a customer, right? It's a lot easier to take a customer and then figure out how to extract more revenue for him in multiple ways versus saying, okay, I'm going to go and acquire 1,000 more customers, right? So I think retention for any business is super critical.
Right, makes sense. What are your views on the entire B2B versus B2C landscape in India? And I, of course, like, you're a big fan of B2B and you've built a B2B, huge B2B business.
Yeah.
But again, what are your thoughts on the B2C side? Which one is more difficult to scale, or what do you think about these two segments?
Both are very difficult to scale. I think fundamentally any business is very difficult to scale, right? वो तो है ही. B2C side, I would say over the last 10 years, if you think about it, there has been a large amount of innovation, large amount of digitization that's already happened, right? Guys like Myntra, Flipkart, Nykaa have become massive giants. So opportunity come hai. It's not that the market is not there. There have been recent B2B, B2C or D2C companies that have become very large. FirstCry became very large, right? So there are niches that are unexplored, but overall it's a tough market, right? If you say today that you want to build a B2C business which is a multi-category online shopping platform, then you're competing with Amazon, Flipkart, Myntra, and that's a tough one to go after, right? So I think if you're looking at B2C as a founder, it would be better to look at something which is niche and largely untapped, right? B2B is a whole different game because B2B is largely undertapped, right? Apart from the 2-3 unicorns that exist in B2B, it's mostly an untapped market. And even with those unicorns in those markets, they are not even at 10% market share. So there's a massive opportunity to go after, right? B2B mein exports is also a massive element, right? So B2C you're constrained to your country ka domestic market. So if you want to expand beyond that, you have to go and launch in a new country. But in B2B, you can take that same shirt, which we are selling to say Myntra in India and sell a very similar shirt to Zara in Spain, right? So the export component makes it a much larger global opportunity to go after. And B2B has its own nuances, I would say, right? So B2B may elements like working capital become a lot more important, where your unit economics might be very great, but if your cash flow receivables are not great, then you get stuck in a rut.
So do you think monetization is easier in a B2B business as compared to B2C?
I would say in a B2B business, if you are not monetizing at a gross margin level, there is something fundamentally very wrong, right?
So what do you mean by that? Can you elaborate?
Like if you are, as I said earlier, buying something for 100 rupees and selling it for 95 in a B2B business,
That's
there's something very off in the business model, in my view, right? Whereas in a B2C business, that might still make sense that, okay, you're trying to acquire a certain critical mass of consumers. Similar strategy is what a lot of the giants today have taken. And once you've acquired a certain critical mass, you turn to profitability, right? Whereas in a B2B business, then that just means you're using incentives or discounts to acquire the GMV. But those factories or those traders are working with you only because they're getting the discounts or incentives, right? The moment you stop giving them that, what is to say that they will continue working with you?
Right, makes sense. And in terms of your entrepreneurial journey, right? I mean, you have built a 1300 crores company at a very young age of 25. So, I mean, like, what are some of the insights that you have got about the Indian audience, or maybe some very sharp insights through your entrepreneurial stint, which you think, यार ये तो पढ़ के बिल्कुल भी नहीं मिलने वाला है? You can think and answer if you want. Yeah.
Especially on B2B, right, and especially on the manufacturing community, I would say one is cash is king. Cash surpasses margin, right? Which is not something you would think otherwise, right? If you give someone upfront payment, he will do it at a much lower margin for you, right? Versus telling him, अच्छा 15% रख लो, but मैं आपको 120 दिन बाद पैसा दूंगा, right? So cash is king. Second is simplicity and basics is everything, right? So that is why selling SaaS to B2B consumers or B2B factories in India is so hard, because उनको ये नहीं समझ में आता, उनको धंधा समझ में आता है कि मुझे ऑर्डर चाहिए, मुझे कपड़ा चाहिए ऑर्डर बनाने के लिए, right? And third would be that you have to make their lives easier in some way for them to work with you, right? Because I feel the life or the effort and pain it takes to run a B2B factory or trading company in India is like super hard, right? Any of these factory owners we know are working 15-16 hours a day. They're in the factory from morning to night, right? So unless you figure out a way to make their life easier, you will not make money. And even if you make money, that will not be sustainable. And we have actually now seen that playing out in textiles, where 10 years back we had a lot of these basic buying houses or trading companies, right, who would not add any value of the supply chain but just price arbitrage करके profit कमाते थे, right? And over the last 5 years, most of them actually started declining in revenue, or started to wither away, which has been my biggest insight, कि unless you actually add value, unless you actually provide some support to any one stakeholder, you will, even if you make a decent amount of margin in between, it will go away after a point.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. But I was just wondering, because since you're working with, like tier 2, tier 3 cities factories as well, so it would have been difficult for you also to solve some of the problems, because you're working with those kind of people as well. How do you tackle that? Because it becomes difficult after a point.
There I would say localization is everything, right? So I think as a founder, you cannot say you will do it yourself, right? Yeah. So you cannot say that I sitting here in Bombay will manage a factory based in Tirupur myself, right? You have to have local teams. You have to build good local teams, leaders there who you trust, who can represent you. And that is very important, because let's say we have more than 70-80 factories in Dhaka now, right? And we have a 17-18 member team there, but they are representing Groyyo in the truest sense. Whatever they say is what the market there will consider as holy grail, right? So building that team, putting that effort there, combined with, as a founder, you constantly being on the ground. I am in Dhaka every alternate month myself, right? So just having a constant pulse of the ground yourself. And as you rightly said, the pain points are very different, right? Dhaka has a banking issue pain point which India mein nahi hai. So just being aware of the pain point so that you know what you're talking about, even to your team. Because as founders, your role is, of course, a lot of times to give direction to your team. So you need to know what problem their customers are facing to be able to guide them in a certain way.
Right, makes sense. Apart from the industry where you're working in right now, what are some other sectors you would be bullish on as far as the future of Indian economy is concerned?
In B2B specifically, or
anything in general? Yeah.
See, in B2B specifically, I would say anything across hard goods, ceramics, agriculture, I would be very bullish on. B2B financial services I'll be very, very bullish on, right? I think not more on the cross-border space than the domestic space. I think domestic space, after working in countries like Turkey and in Bangladesh, I realized how good is India, right? Because we have a fantastic NBFC ecosystem. We have a fantastic digital lending ecosystem with likes of, say, CredX, Cred Avenue, Giraffe all coming in, right? But jo cross-border financial ecosystem, in my view, it's a bit of a open spot. There is a lot that can happen there. So I would be very bullish on that. And in D2C, I would be very bullish on niche categories where you can create consumer value. And one such business we've seen very closely is Damensh, for example, which is one of our customers, right? We have seen them scale phenomenally just by identifying that niche ki Indian middle class, upper middle class folks want high quality loungewear and sleepwear. We can provide them that, which a jockey cannot, right? So just those granularity niches in D2C or B2C, I would be very bullish on.
Right. Yeah, that's an interesting insight. And apart from that, like for Groyyo specifically, so what's your vision for this company, and what do you like? I mean, where do you see this company growing for the next couple of years, 3 years? What's your vision for this?
Yeah, I think our vision when we started and what it is today very clearly is that we actively see supply chains moving outside of China, right? This is not a COVID phenomenon. If you look at empirical data, it's been a 10-year phenomenon, and it's going to be a 10 more year phenomenon. Now, as supply chains move away from China, it's a massive opportunity for the whole region, right? So while we are Indians and I would be very bullish on India, I would say it's for the whole region. So we want to be the largest globally aggregated supply chain for apparel and lifestyle outside of China. That दुनिया में किसी को भी apparel lifestyle में कुछ भी खरीदना है as a brand, Groyyo is your go-to guy. Right. So right now we have India, Bangladesh and Turkey. Vietnam and Indonesia is next on the map for us. That will make us the largest in this part of the world, right? For the next 2-3 years, we would see ourselves doubling down on Indonesia and Vietnam, and of course expanding further into international markets in UK, GCC and the US.
Were you this ambitious since childhood, or how did this ambition spark inside you?
A lot of it is just, while I always was, it's been reinforced over time with the right opportunity, being able to execute well. And
no, but I mean, this is very super inspiring and super impressive with what you have done. How do you feel after achieving so much at 25, building a rupees 1300 crores company plus scaling and growing so fast? How do you feel? I mean, like, what's the...
I would say one, I feel very, very thankful. I think a lot of it has been different components working out in very unique ways for me, right? Like the component of finding a great co-founder, not just a great co-founder, finding a great founding team, right? Like I see so many founders struggling with finding a CFO. I found a CFO as my 5th employee, right? And he's been like, without him the business wouldn't have survived, right? Or finding a great CTO who joined us recently, right? So just the luck or the fortune of having found the right pillar at every point of time. So being thankful is very one part of it. Second, I think we still feel that we have barely done anything, right? How we think of it is कि apparel lifestyle exports out of just India and Bangladesh is a $100 billion market. मतलब 8,000 crore का market है, right?
100 billion.
100 billion, sorry, हाँ. More than 8,000 crore, my bad, right? तो बड़ा 8 लाख करोड़ का market है, right? 8 लाख करोड़ का market है, उसमें we are not even 0.001%.
Yeah.
तो अभी तो बहुत कुछ करना है.
Got it. Oh, is it this big market?
Yeah.
Wow.
$45 billion in India, about $50 billion Bangladesh.
Oh wow. Yeah, that's a big market.
Yeah.
No, very, very nice, very ambitious as well. How does a typical day in your life look like right now? How do you spend your time, right from morning to evening? Morning to night, actually.
There's a lot of travel,
Yeah.
usually. I'm barely in one city for more than 3-4 days. I try to start off early, but I'm not that much of an early riser. But I'm usually up and active by 9:30, 10 at the most, right? I'll spend a lot of my time on finance and commercial. That's a large part of the business I personally look at. So things like receivables, किससे पैसा आना है, payables, किसको पैसा देना है, right? Looking at our working capital, debt structures, that's large part of bandwidth. Second part of my bandwidth would still be a large amount on day-to-day hazard solving, right? कि कहीं पे कुछ अटका है, कुछ नहीं हो रहा है, कैसे करना है. Third part would be on hiring, which is another key element I really look at. Even today I have a LinkedIn recruiter from my team, and I will make sure कि twice a week I'm sitting for 2 hours on LinkedIn recruiter trying to find the right people. उस पे बहुत I put a lot of time, right? And I would say once at least 2 weeks when me and my co-founder happen to be in the same city, we will just sit down in the evening for a couple of hours over a drink, and that's usually where we do the most amount of brainstorming, right? कि अभी क्या कर सकते हैं, क्या opportunity दिख रहा है, where are we lacking today? So that's another key part.
So do you have a personal life? Do you spend time with your friends or something of that sort?
Not that much. Yeah. With family, yes, I think.
Yeah, of course.
I try to
But-
ensure spend time with my parents. I think it's a part of the journey of being a founder, and I've not just as a founder. I've seen this as Zilingo also. And when I was like technically in a job, right, you have to accept that you have to throw yourself fully into it, right? Unless you have thrown yourself fully into it, you're not really doing it. So my personal life also revolves around like folks who are in my leadership team, who are my core team, are very very good friends of mine. Like even if it is a personal problem, I will still call them for advice, right? So they have that's the level, and that's also the level of bond we have built as a team. I remember someone when we were um, part of a large part of our leadership team was in Abu Dhabi recently, and someone from another startup had come down. We had gone for a outing. They're like, you all seem like one big family which keeps fighting and bickering. And I think that's the reason why we succeeded so much, because we've all bonded so well together that we're like a family now. That जो भी होता है झगड़ा करते हैं, साथ में ही प्लान करते हैं आउटिंग, कहीं घूमने भी जाना है साथ में प्लान करते हैं,
How
यहाँ
big is
जाना
the
है.
entire team at Groyyo?
We are about 185 employees now.
Wow.
Yeah. Leadership team out of that is about 7 people.
Got it. Makes sense. What would be your learning resources?
In a sense?
In like, how do you stay updated with what's happening in the economy? Do you listen to some podcasts? Do you read some articles like newsletters or something of that sort?
Articles quite a bit
Which
across
would be-
Economist for sure. Staying updated on business news on ET for sure. Markets are something I still very actively track. Second large learning for me has been angel investing and talking to founders. Right? Interestingly, every company I've invested in, I've been able to take something from there back to my own company. Right? So
Oh,
that's
wow. Nice.
so
And I assume you would be investing in B2B companies only.
nahin, I do done B2B and fintech so
Okay.
far. Not nothing consumer, B2B and
How
fintech.
many investments you've done so far?
7.
Wow, that's a good number.
Yeah.
Nice. And how do you manage your finances? Like after, of course, like you're making a lot and you're doing so well. So how do you manage your money? What's your investment strategy like?
So large part is towards equities and angel investments. I take with there me and Pratik are very different. He being older will look at more FDs and घर खरीद लेते हैं.
Bonds.
Bonds. My thought is I'm younger. There's very little downside risk, very high upside risk. So I largely do equities and angel investments. I very little mostly in short term FDs if I have to just park some cash, but otherwise
Got it.
not that much.
And what would be your one piece of advice to all the aspiring entrepreneurs who are looking to start out their own ventures?
शुरू करो. That's the only advice. Start. I think genuinely I've just met a lot of people, even in my friend circle, who are like, अच्छा ये कर सकते हैं, and they'll spend like months strategizing, right? 90% of what you strategize before you start up is out of the window after you start it up, right? So just start, get it off the ground, start running. You will figure it out. And if you don't figure it out, you will have a lot of learning on why it didn't work out, and then you can start something else, right?
Yeah.
So just start would be my biggest.
Right, I agree. There's a lot of fear of failure which is there in the ecosystem. If
Correct.
you're able to conquer that, I think it's easier for you to move on and start something very
Absolutely.
immediately.
Absolutely. I think start, and second thing I would say is don't go by macro insights, go by micro insights. I see a lot of folks trying to build something on macro insights. That okay, I feel B2B chemical is very exciting because there's a market shift happening, right? But what do you know about B2B chemicals, right? So I think right to win as a founder is the thing you should actually really be rough on yourself about, right? कि इंडिया में इतने smart लोग हैं. We are such a young, aspiring, ambitious population. What gives you the right to build a multi-billion company in this space, right? So go be more micro, right? That do I know the industry well? Do I know enough of the ground reality? Can I build and scale a team? And that matters a lot once you start scaling, right? Because for example, if I'm approving say 10 deals today, I need to know what is happening at every deal myself to be able to approve it. Otherwise, beyond a point, you cannot be in control of your business, right? So just be more micro than macro.
Yeah, that's a wonderful advice. One last question before we conclude.
Yeah.
This is a tricky one which I ask every guest.
Achha.
If you were in the shoes of Kushal Lodha and you were interviewing Subin Mitra, what is that one question which you would like to ask him towards the end of the interview?
That's an interesting one. I don't have an upfront answer for that. Maybe only one would be that how do you manage your day-to-day sort of personal life, etc., while also running a large business?
Yeah, so how do you manage your personal life while running a large business? I think you briefly answered that, right?
Yeah,
There's no,
yeah, a little bit, just
less personal life.
Yeah, just that's personal life, and I think as a founder, just pick people you enjoy working with.
Yeah,
Right? If
agree.
you're not enjoying the people you're working with, तो फटने वाला है.
I agree.
Because it's a lonely journey, no matter how you look at it, right? The only comfort in a lonely journey are people who are with you on the journey. right? Even your employees can't give you that comfort beyond a point. Your leadership and your co-founder can. So just pick people who you can really fall back on a rough take. यार, nothing seems right. सब कुछ लग रहा है फटने वाला है. What do we do? Right?
I agree. I mean, I completely resonate with you as a founder myself, although not at all achieving not even 1% of what you've achieved
ऐसा
in
कुछ
life.
नहीं.
But to be honest, I mean, yeah, that's a lonely journey. And even I've started something couple of months back. But you need to be on your toes 24/7.
Correct.
You need to sacrifice your personal life. No matter how many people will say कि यार work-life balance होना चाहिए और सब कुछ balance होना चाहिए. But that's difficult if you're starting something in the initial stages. What I
Correct.
feel. And after you hustle and after you achieve something, then probably, I mean, I don't know if it's from person to person. If you can keep it on an autopilot mode, then you can have that kind of a balance. But if you want to be completely involved and be hands-on in the part of the business, then I think you'll have to sacrifice some sort of personal life. After a point in time, in my opinion, to be honest, your work is going to comprise like majority of your time. I mean, like majority of your time, and then you have to spend your time with your colleagues, employees, and all of that.
Yeah.
So making them friends after a point in time would be much more better, in my opinion.
Correct.
But yeah, that's my piece of advice. But thank you so much, Subin, for doing this. I hope you had a great time. I could do justice to your time. But wonderful talking to you, and it was like podcast with full of insights. I'm sure a lot of people, aspiring founders, are going to gain a lot of insights. Thanks for doing this, and thanks for your time.
Thank you so much for having me, Kushal. Love doing this.
Thank you so much. Perfect.